Hello, class, and welcome to Chapter 4 review. First thing we're going to talk about is technical aspects of EKG Chapter 4. Control features. As we know, the EKG has various control features, including the following. Chart speed. This regulates the speed at which the paper records, where the normal default chart speed is 25 millimeters per second. If changes occur in the chart speed, it can double the width of the waves and complexes. Changing the chart speed is useful when patients have a very fast rhythm. As you can see from the example, at the regular 25 millimeters per second, how the QRSs are real tiny. But if we expand it to 50 millimeters per second, it kind of widens out and we'll be able to see that hidden P that we couldn't see before when it was together at a fast rate. And now we can see it. The next control feature is the gain. The gain regulates the height of the QRS. The normal default of a gain is set at 10 millimeters per millivolt. Increasing the gain is important if the rhythm printout is small and hard to read. It is critical to check or increase the gain setting if the patient appears to be in a flatline rhythm. And these is just examples of different gain settings and how the QRS differs, how you can read and be more precise on what you see. Whereas we set it at 10, and if we set it at 12, you can see there's a little hump right after that QRS before the T wave forms. The next control feature is called the frequency frequency response. This features out extraneous noise and artifacts to provide a smoother EKG reading. So if we didn't have this frequency response, your EKG would look like this. And we really couldn't read where the QRS starts and stops because we have too much interference and noise. So when we put on the frequency response, we end up with a reading like this, to where we can see where our PQRS are once we get rid of all the unnecessary noise. Always note, whenever any settings is changed from the norm, it's very important that you document this change on the top of the EKG. That way no misinterpretations are done due to the fact that we have changed the settings from what is normally supposed to be set at. And the doctor won't be confused as to why you have different settings or why a person's QRS is wider than what it's supposed to be. The next topic we'll talk about is electrical safety. You have macro shock, which is a high voltage shock resulting from an inadequate grounding of electrical equipment. This can be caused due to a frayed or broken wire or cord, or an electrical outlet damage or other electrical malfunctions. Then you have a micro shock, which is a smaller shock, but it's still very dangerous. This shock comes directly from the heart by means of a pacemaker. It's normally a small leakage current is produced around the pacemaker and carried harmlessly away from the ground. Carries harmlessly away from the ground wire, attaching the patient's bed to the electrical socket in the room, which will give the patient an extra jolt than what the pacemaker would normally give. Next, we'll talk about artifacts. As we know, artifacts are unwanted interference or jitters on an EKG tracing. This can make reading an EKG very difficult. There are four kinds of artifacts. You have seismic tremor, where seismic means body. Seismic tremor artifacts is a jittery pattern caused by patterns tremors or by shaking wires. Sometimes this artifact cannot be corrected due to a patient that suffers from tremors from Parkinson's disease. If your patient is diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, we usually have to perform at least 3 different EKG readings and choose the best one. Always remember to document at the top. If you took 3 readings, you have to say best out of 3 recordings. And this is what a seismic tremor looks like. Next artifact we have is called the baseline sway. This is where the baseline moves up and down and moves away from the original baseline. This can be caused by someone breathing irregular, or if the patient has lotion or sweat on the skin surface where the electrodes are attached and it's not reading to the machine. That is why it's very important to wipe down the areas where the electrodes are going to be placed with an alcohol prep so we don't have baseline sways. And this is a baseline sway where it starts out on the baseline and then it goes up and down. The next artifact we'll talk about is 60 cycle interference. This results in a thick looking pattern on the paper. It is caused by too many electrical devices that are close to the EKG machine. Just remember when you're doing an EKG reading or recording to make sure that patient's TV, cell phone, tablet, etc. are off, and also to check to make sure that your electrical equipment is not close to the EKG machine while you're performing the EKG. This is a 60 cycle interference. This is what it looks like. Okay. The last artifact is called the broken recording. This can be caused by a frayed or fractured wire or by a loose electrode patch or cable. Always make sure to check your EKG machine before performing a reading on a patient. Always check your cables, your wires, to make sure everything is in good shape, and also check your electrodes to make sure that they're not expired, because expired electrodes can also give you a broken recording due to the fact that the conductant, which is the sticky part of the electrode, is no good or dried out. Things we need to remember whenever we're doing an EKG if we are having artifacts in our reading, even though we have checked everything. This is how we troubleshoot, is to determine what is causing the recording error. These are the steps you need to take when troubleshooting. Look to see which lead or leads have an artifact. Determine which way the artifact are reading. Example. In this example here, we see that leads 1, 3, and AVL have artifacts. Next, we will determine which way each lead records from. Hint, hint. Always remember to use or try to remember Einthoven's triangle. Right. So we know that lead 1 reads from right arm to left arm. We know that lead 3 reads from left arm to left leg, and that AVL reads from left arm to left leg at a diagonal. So which lead shows up more? Left arm. So determine what kind of artifact. It's a seismic tremor. It's trembling. So your solution is, if patient doesn't suffer from Parkinson's disease, place a warm blanket on the patient's feet to keep them warm, and also to check your left arm lead to see if the electrode is not faulty or your wires are not frayed or damaged or loose. Next, we have artifacts masquerading as rhythms. Artifacts can masquerade sometimes as life-threatening rhythms. Just always remember, it's better to check on your patient than to assume that the rhythm is an artifact, even though it may not seem to be like a real rhythm. It's better to be safe than sorry. There are several different artifacts that can look like a real rhythm. We have the artifact masquerading as an astole or flat line. Just remember, the human body is a large electrical conductor. When the heart stops, it just stops contracting. Electrical impulse still conduct out, just the heart is not responding. So it's never going to be a straight line. There's going to be some type of wave pattern going on. It may be slight, but it's still there. Next, we have the toothbrush tachycardia. This artifact looks like the patient is going into VFib, but you can see the slight difference between a VTach and a toothbrush tachycardia. Then you have the CPR artifact. This is caused due to the compressions that are being performed that make it look like a rhythm is being outputted, but it's not. The next artifact is the defibrillation cardioversion artifact. Then you have the artifact that's in the 3 lead monitoring simultaneously. Just make sure you read page 54, real or artifact, how to tell the difference. That is very important because it gives you a lot of clues as to how you can tell if a rhythm is real or if a rhythm is an artifact. If you have any questions about chapter 4, make sure that you text or message me. Chapter 4's test is on Tuesday, which is also the end of chapter of mod 151. So be mindful and please make up any work that you have missed, and I will talk to y'all later.